Oh, there's a lot of Canadians here. I'm also Canadian, so that makes me very happy to see.
Nice. Indonesia, London, Mexico. Wow, we're very global.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'm surprised that it's so global. I mean, the time zones are just so different.
Singapore. Wait, it's like the middle of the night for y'all. Also comment like what time it is, because yeah. All right, awesome. We are live on YouTube. Welcome everyone. If y'all are just joining in, let us know where you are tuning in from in the chat, what industry you work in or want to work in, and what do you do. And with that, we'll hand it over to Cecilia from our buddies at Bezel.
Awesome. Thanks, Grace. Yeah, let's get started. So, hi, I'm Cecilia. I'm a co-founder and designer at Bezel. I'm really happy to be here today with Design Buddies. I've actually been a part of Design Buddies for some time, and it's really exciting to be able to host this event alongside Grace and her team. We're actually going to be doing a walkthrough and a demo of Bezel at the end, so make sure to stick around till the end. I want to start off by sharing some really cool experiences, both prototypes and real products that blew me away recently. This is by a company called Whist Labs, and they enable you to step inside your memories in AR just by taking a video. Imagine a world where instead of looking at photos and videos on your phone screen, you can actually be inside them and experience it again. What's even more exciting is that this is an actual product that exists today. This is a prototype exploring what our world could look like when you don't have to own multiple screens of varying sizes to get stuff done. What this means is that as long as you have your AR headset, you can sit at a cafe and spawn multiple big screens around you to edit your videos, design, or do whatever you want to do. I'm personally really excited for a future where I don't have to lug a 16-inch MacBook around. If any non-electronic items can have AR capabilities, there's really no limit to the things that we could do. This particular video is showing a guitar tuning widget without having to buy any hardware, but imagine this expanding to other use cases. If you click a button, it could become sheet music, or it could also open up a video tutorial that you can follow along, or it could even become an AR Guitar Hero game. Google made some really exciting announcements recently about their new geospatial creator. This is a new tool to help you create world-scale immersive AR experiences. This means that there could be a layer within Google Maps that contain your creations that other people can experience as you walk around in the world. Or how about being in your living room and also simultaneously being present in your friend's home in a different country and watching the same game together in 3D like you're sitting beside each other. It would be like you both have courtside seats to the game together. Going between real world and virtual world using portals is something that is really interesting. This particular prototype was actually made in Bezel by our own Daniel, where he explored how this transition could work. Now imagine if something like IKEA had experiences like this for their showrooms, where you could be immersed in it and shop wherever you are. The possibilities are truly endless here. So now we're going to travel back in time a little bit. The first computers actually came into the workplace in the 1950s. They were huge, basically filling the whole room, and they were really expensive machines mainly used by government agencies and large corporations for scientific calculations and data processing. In the decades following that, computers got more compact and more powerful. The invention of the World Wide Web enabled computers to become more compelling, and it really transformed the way we communicate and do business. Then there were the first handheld cell phones in the 1980s. They were like bricks, and they enabled people to make longer distance calls than just a landline phone, if you guys remember what that is. One interesting thing I found was that the first touchscreen phone was made by IBM, and it came out in 1992. Throughout the next few decades, mobile phones became smaller and more affordable. The launch of the first iPhone in 2007 marked a turning point in the industry, and smartphones quickly became the dominant type of mobile phones. Smartphones have completely shifted how we design too, starting with responsive design, as well as designing unique interaction patterns that feel increasingly natural, such as pinch to zoom and swipe to change pages thanks to the touchscreen. This is one of the most ambitious of them yet. In the 1980s, the first proof of concept VR headsets were developed. In the following decades, more and more headsets increasingly compact form factors were released. Standalone headsets like the Oculus Quest 2 allowed people to enter immersive experiences without being tethered to a PC. The next evolution of headsets will be exponentially smaller and smaller, down to something that looks like everyday glasses. This is already happening with AR glasses, something like Nreal Air AR glasses. So you might be wondering, why am I talking about this? It's because if you look at the patterns of the history of computing, it's pretty clear that this is the future that we've been working towards. Something that frees ourselves from the 2D limitations of computing today, where people interact with each other instead of having to stare at glowing rectangles all day. And that's the goal of technology, to bring people together and to be invisible in the background. Next month, it's highly likely that there will be a new player in the market, and that is Apple. Apple has been developing their XR headset for a while, and it's really exciting because they have a full ecosystem of products like iPhone, iPad, MacBook, AirPods, and Apple Watches that could work seamlessly with the headset. This also means that this is the best time to familiarize yourself with XR design, and that skill will be a huge advantage for your career in the near future. You can already see the changes in recent design languages evolving to include more and more 3D elements. With so many big tech companies such as Apple, Google, Meta, Samsung, and more investing heavily in this platform, we can predict that this will be an increasingly important skill to have as a designer. That brings us to our philosophy: human-centered design, not machine-centered design. Today's product design is largely machine-centered. And what I'm talking about here is different than user-friendly UX flows or even motion design. When we're designing products today, we're thinking about how to make something fit within a rectangular frame for the most part. We're either designing for a desktop screen, mobile screen, or somewhere in between. But the reality is that we're living three-dimensional lives confined in 2D products. So previous to mobile devices, designers had to design just for desktop, which is why you would get websites that looked really dense like this, because you had more real estate to work with, and designers were inspired by existing mediums like newspapers. With the advent of mobile devices, designers had to take into consideration not only the difference in size and orientation of the screens, but also the unique interaction patterns that emerge due to touchscreens. In the near future, designers will have to design for all three platforms: desktop, mobile, and XR. And this brings up a ton of really interesting challenges. We're starting to get to a place where products and experiences are designed for the human form, not a screen. As a designer myself, one thing that I'm really excited to see is how multiple design disciplines will start to merge and blend together. Spatial computing will touch every part of our lives, starting with education, entertainment, fashion, e-commerce, all the way to modern medicine. The boundaries between different design disciplines will become more and more blurred, and product designers will not only have to be UX and UI designers, but also interior designers, architects, fashion designers, and more. For example, let's think about what FigJam could look like in this world. As a designer on the FigJam team, you're tasked with designing the experience of brainstorming with your team in mobile, desktop, and XR. You can already start to kind of see how different the experience could be, even for the same product. For desktop, you might be designing for people sitting at their desks, looking at their laptop screen, and doing focus work. For mobile, you might be designing for someone participating on the go, or maybe they're just like reviewing the outcomes of the brainstorm on their phone. For XR, you could be designing for someone who might be working remotely and joins to brainstorm as an avatar in the meeting room. And you need to think about how the stickies might appear in space, how to anchor them to a wall, how the brainstorm visualization would show up in 2D screens versus 3D space, how the avatars show up in the real world, and where they can spawn in space. So how do you design for it? How can I prepare myself for this new platform shift? And the tools here are really important. So let's take a look at the product design process and how that evolved from a tools perspective. Some of y'all here might remember this, but this is actually how you would prototype experiences for mobile devices and desktop. It's really hard to believe that we actually used to do this. Like I used to do this in school. It's truly crazy to think about in an age where you can prototype and sometimes ship production quality apps or websites with zero code. Everyone has slightly different processes and uses slightly different tools when it comes to design, but this is largely what it looked like in 2013. It also pains me to say this, but people used to do product design in Photoshop. We didn't have tools like Sketch or Figma, so Photoshop was really the only choice of interface design, and we all know that that's not what it's built for. Prototyping was also a pain or almost impossible if you didn't know code. So designers were using, paper prototypes to validate ideas and do user research. Now, the product design process has been streamlined and become more powerful by a huge leap. Everyone here probably uses Figma or Sketch to design and prototype. And if you need to prototype something more advanced, you might use specialized tools like Principle or Protopie or Framer. Because Figma is such a good collaboration canvas, designers also use it to do brainstorm sessions and get feedback from non-design partners. We're seeing a similar evolution for design and prototyping for XR. Thanks to the advancements in mobile design tools, we're seeing a pretty clear roadmap to making the design process better and more accessible to everyone. This GIF always cracks me up because it's basically just people running around, carrying around pieces of paper to show how a prototype is done. But let's take a look at what that means. Just a couple years ago, this is what the process largely looked like. Designers were using a combination of Notion, BigJam, Procreate, and some 3D tools for brainstorming, and also lo-fi ideation. And then it goes straight into tools that have a very high learning curve, like Blender and Unity, which is a game engine mostly geared towards developers. Because the tools here are not very accessible for designers working mostly in desktop to design these experiences, the barrier to entry is super high. It means that you would basically need to spend days, if not weeks, to even learn the basics of the program. For Unity, because it's meant for developers, if you don't know scripting, you would hit a wall pretty quickly. So I actually experienced this firsthand while I was working as a designer at Oculus because the right tools didn't exist yet. It made me feel really constrained and blocked from being able to design compelling experiences and communicate my ideas to the rest of the team effectively. I know for a fact that I wasn't the only one that felt that way. It was a very common shared sentiment around all the designers who worked at Oculus. And this is exactly why my co-founders and I left Oculus to start Bezel. So we launched Bezel in public beta in February of this year. What we're already seeing is that designers are able to pick up Bezel really quickly to do lo-fi, medium-fi, and hi-fi prototyping up until it goes to the developers for shipping production apps and experiences. Our mission is to enable all designers to be able to create 3D experiences, which is something that's been impossible before. We're just getting started, but it's really exciting to see what people have been able to create with Bezel, even just 3 months after launching a beta to the public. So our goal is to enable designers to do everything in Bezel without the need to jump between different programs, which I know is a huge pain point right now. We're building a 3D design and prototyping tool that can run on any platform. The future is multi-device and multi-platform, and it will be more and more important for you to be able to design for all of these. With Bezel, you can design 3D experiences on any platform because it's browser-based, like Figma is. Previewing your work on multiple platforms is effortless. You literally just copy and paste a link in your browser to see it in mobile, AR, and headset. It also allows you to easily communicate with communicate with other programs and design tools with integrations. For example, we have an integration with Figma to be able to bring in Figma files into Bezel and then keep them in sync. So all of these prototypes shown here, hopefully they're not too choppy on VC, but they were they were made using Bezel. So as you can see, there's some really interesting prototypes that you can use using some of the unique features that we have around AR mode, interactions and animations, occlusion materials, and hands that you can have in VR. The best part is that you should be able to pick it up within a few hours and make an actual AR experience without any code. And then you can share it with anyone using a link. So to sum it up, Bezel is versatile. It's the only tool that you can use to design a 3D experience in and have it work on desktop, mobile, and headset. As we talked about, the future is multi-platform, so everything you design will need to work in all 3 platforms. Also, if you have previous experience in 3D, I'm sure you've run into issues when collaborating with others or trying to get feedback. Most of the times, your stakeholder or 2D designers wouldn't have the program that you use installed, or they wouldn't know how to use it. So you would have to record a video or take screenshots to send to them. We remove all of this complication entirely because you can just share a link. And whether they're at the desk, on the move, immersed in their headset, they can open it and interact with the prototype right away. You can even embed it on your site or in your Notion docs. Because we're building a flexible and versatile tool, we've also seen people use it for non-XR related projects such as interior design or installation art projects. Bezel is collaborative. We all know that great things are always done in teams. Bezel is built to be collaborative from the start because we recognize how important it is to be able to synchronously or asynchronously work together. It's really fun when you're just able to jump into 3D canvas and start making things together. And lastly, Bezel is fast and powerful. Although our goal is to make Bezel as accessible to everyone as possible, we also want the tool to grow with you. So we're early in our journey, but we've added powerful features like the state machine, timeline, and AR mode to enable designers like you to make complex prototypes easily. We have a lot more coming in this arena, so definitely keep an eye out. So with that, I was thinking that we could just jump into a file and try some things out together. I can show you how Bezel works, and by the end of this, you'll have a really simple prototype that you see on the screen right now that works on your mobile device in AR. So in terms of steps, you can go to bezel.it. You can sign up if you don't have an account already, or sign in if you do, and then create a new file after you've done that. And then I'll share my screen with the new file and kind of take you through the steps. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this. Yeah, while we're setting this up, does anyone have questions that I can answer in the meantime? I'm going to give folks a couple minutes to get everything set up. Doesn't one need AR glasses or VR headsets to experience and learn XR design? What is a prerequisite in terms of hardware for XR design? That's a really good question. Bezel is built to be a cross-platform, like I said, and we realize that this is really important because we want to enable designers who don't have AR glasses or headsets, the hardware itself, to be able to still design and concept ideas in a spatial way. So you don't really need to have a headset to get started. A lot of designers at Oculus, I remember, they wouldn't necessarily be using the headset to design all the time. Most of the work would actually be done on desktop, and you would send videos and stuff to other people to get feedback. Does Bezel support PBR workflow? I'm going to say yes to this because we support the materials. Yeah, as long as you have the materials imported right, it should work. Can you import 3D models from Unreal or other platforms? So we support 3D model imports as long as they are GLTF, GLB, OBJ, FBX. And I think that's it. Am I missing anything, Julian?
I think that's about it.
Yeah, so as long as you export any models out in that format, you'll be able to import it in by dragging and dropping it into a Bezel file. Okay, I think maybe that was enough time for people to set up, so I'm gonna share my screen.
Yeah, we also support STL.
STL, that's right. I knew I was missing something. Okay, cool. Can you guys see my screen? Yes, cool. Okay, so we're gonna make that floating apple prototype that I shared in the presentation. It should be fairly quick, but I'll take you guys through all the kind of the major steps that you will need to take in order to do the challenge that we're gonna kick off this today. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I have an empty file open here. The first thing I'm going to do is import an Apple model into here. So to do that, I'm going to open the library. So you can do that by clicking on this little icon on the top nav. And then our library has some default assets that you can kind of start with. All of these are really, really light and should work pretty well. So I'm going to type in apple here to find the asset that I want. And then I found green apple. So I'm going to drag that out and then place it in the center of the scene. And there's my apple. I'm going to move this up a little bit so that it's sitting slightly above. So I think this apple is pretty big. It's a 2 meter by 2 meter apple. And since we're going to be designing something for the desk, so obviously that's too big. I'm going to change the units here. So if you don't have anything selected in the scene, you can see the right side panel, and then you can see that under units, it says meters right now. I'm going to click on that drop down and then change it to inches so that we're working with a more realistic unit. So I have that in units, 83 inches, that's definitely too big. I'm going to change that to 4 inches for the X, and that should make it much smaller and more manageable. So I have that little apple here. A pro tip here is that if you have something that's kind of off screen or too small, you can just you can click on the object and then you can do F for focus. So now you see that it's come up in our command center. So if you type in F, the first thing that's selected will be focus. And to activate that, you can either press space bar or enter. So I'm going to press space bar, and now it's framed it nicely in my view. The next thing I'm gonna do is I want to change the material so that it's got that like purpley, like nice material, but you guys can do whatever you want. So I'm gonna select the apple. Where did you get the apple? Oh, you can get it from the library. So see on the top nav bar, you like click that, and then click on Bezel Library All, like this tab, and then you can type in apple to find what you need. Can you show how you change the units of measurement from meters to inches? Yeah. So if you don't have anything selected in the scene, you can look on the right side panel here, and then you'll see units, and it would say meters. So you just click on that drop down and then change it to inches. Okay, so I have the green apple selected. I'm gonna change the material to something that I like more. So to do that, I'm gonna go to the right side panel where it says material, and I'm gonna click on that material thumbnail, and it'll open up this popover. This model was, the material is using an atlas, which is a way to keep image texture files really small and performant. So that's why it looks like this. You can keep it if you want, but for the purpose of my prototype, I'm just going to remove it and just use a single color for the entire apple. So I'm going to click on this trash icon to remove that. And then I'm going to put like a purpley color here. Oh no. I want to kind of put a sheen over it, which means that it'll have a slightly different color around the edges to just make it look a little cooler. So what I'm gonna do is where it says standard material right here, I'm gonna click that, and here is where you can access a lot of different types of materials that we have. So we have unlit, which means that it's not affected by lighting in any sense. To material, which is like that cartoony feel, cartoony material. Physical material, which gives you stuff like glass, sheen, and clear coat. Shadow objects, which literally just it's just to give you a shadow and nothing else, like no other colors. And occluder, which is a really interesting one. It's basically a transparent object that can occlude materials that are behind it. I'm gonna choose physical because I wanted to add a sheen. So I added physical. I chose physical, and then at the bottom it says advanced effects. I'm gonna add a property here, and then click on sheen. So you can already tell that something has changed. It kind of looks like a little more fuzzy, which is the kind of the overall feeling that I wanted. And then I'm gonna change this color so that it's like a red. And then I'm going to adjust the roughness so you get this kind of cool, almost like holographic effect. So as I spin it around, you'll see that take into effect. Another thing to kind of play around with to make your scene look more interesting is HDRI lighting. So for those of you who might not know what HDRI lighting is basically a 360 image that also has light information. So you can use it to create really realistic lighting effects without using a ton of different light objects, which can weigh your file down by quite a bit. To change the HDRI lighting, if you don't have anything selected, on the right sidebar, you will see this HDRI lighting section. So I'm going to click on that, this little library icon here. I'm going to change the dropdown to Bezel Library. And then I'm going to select, you can select any of these, but I'm just going to select Desert one and see what that looks like. So that changed the look a little bit. I think I kind of like that better. Let me just adjust the strength here. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. As a side note, you can actually also add or upload your own HDRIs. So if you're using something like Blockade Labs to generate your own using AI, you can definitely like generate that and then upload it into Bezel to use. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a camera to the scene. And this is because I want to set the start view so that when I do open the prototype on something like mobile devices or on VR, it can spawn me in the right direction. Oops, sorry. I'm also going to move this down a little bit because This is too high when I change the size. Okay, there we go. So to add a camera object, you can go here and like select whatever right here, camera object, or you can just like type in camera to use our command center, and then again press spacebar. What that does, it actually adds a camera right where you were when you clicked that button. So you can kind of like use it as a you can use it as a shortcut almost, or like a camera bookmarks to easily orient yourself again. If you wanted to ever change the camera that you set, you can like click edit camera and then just move your view a little bit and then exit edit mode. And that should change it. I'm gonna lock this and toggle off the visibility so it doesn't get in my way while I'm doing that. Okay, cool. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some UI. So I'm gonna add some buttons. To do this, I wanna place the backing of the button first. So I'll do plane and then spacebar to draw a plane in the scene. I'm just kind of eyeballing stuff right now, but that kind of seems like a good size in relation to the apple. And then I'm gonna round the corners like so. So to do that, once you have the plane selected, it's on the right sidebar. And then where it says corners, you can like adjust it. You can scrub it, or you can input manual or numbers manually to be able to adjust the corner radius, like how you do it in Figma. I'll do that a little more. And then I'm gonna insert in a text object. So again, I'm typing text and then spacebar. Then I'm gonna click here. That's huge, but that's okay. I'm gonna change the text to make it float and scale this down. You can scale things down by using this gizmo. So if you come from a 3D background, this will be familiar to you, but you can grab that cube and like go up and down to be able to scale it, and then rotating it using the gizmo as well. I'm gonna position it like this on the plane. You can't see it right now because it's the same material. So I'm actually gonna, so this is a UI element. So I actually want it to be unlit so that it's not affected by light and it's always kind of bright. So I'm gonna change it to unlit, and you can see the change pretty drastically already. Make it black. And then make this plane also unlit, and that'll make it much brighter like that. So once I have it in a place that I like, I'm gonna go ahead and group that. And then name this button, rename it button. And then rotate it and move it up. So that's the basics of what our scene is kind of going to look like. And then from here, we can add some animations. Actually, I'm going to add another button that says stop, so that we can start and stop it at the same separately. So stop, move that a little, or scale this. Another pro tip is that if you scale something and like see how the corner radiuses are now squished because you resize it, you can click on the object and then right click and then apply scale. And that will even out the corner radius again. And then from there, you can like adjust it however you want to, like so. I'm gonna change this stop button to be like a red color with white text so that it looks different. So yeah, now I think we can start on animations. So to start animating and to start prototyping, you can press on this prototype button at the very top, and that will open a new panel at the bottom. Just to quickly go through this is actually our new feature that launched in beta, I think a week ago. And it's called State Machine on the left side and Timeline on the right side. This is a way to help you really manage your interactions and prototype much easier than actually what we had before, which was more of a list format, which was really hard for you to keep track of what was happening, especially if you've been away from the file a little bit or a new person like jumps into the file. It's really hard to tell. So we created this new system that's the state machine. Basically, it shows the states that the object can have. So if I select apple, I'm gonna rename this to apple because green apple is misleading. Apple. You can see that there's a base state and an any state. The base state is basically what it is right now. Any state can be any of the states that you add on this and this apple. What I wanted to do is have it kind of like move up and down so that like when you click on make it flow, it like moves up and down. And then when you click on stop, it stops at the bottom. So this is a base state. I'm gonna add a new state. So now you can see that there's base state and state one. With the state one of the apple selected, I'm gonna move the apple up like this and it'll save. So if I click on base state, it'll be like this, and then state one, it'll have moved up. So it's saved in each state now. And I want a transition to go between it so that it goes up and down, up and down. So I'm gonna hover over the base state. You'll notice it's like these dots that appear. These are connection points so that you can click and drag out and be able to connect it to another state. So you can see now that base state and state one is connected. So that's a transition. I want an event to trigger this transition. So when I click on that arrow, you can see that it's currently set to when you on pointer down on the apple goes from base state to state one. But what I want is that when I pointer down on the make it flow button, that the apple goes from base state to state one. So sorry, one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rename these so that it's clear. Stop button. So with this popover open, when you click on the arrow, I'm gonna change the trigger object so that it says button. How you can do that is when you hover on this trigger object, you'll see this crosshair icon that appears. And then when you hover on it, it says replace trigger object. I'm gonna click on that, and then I'm gonna select the button. And now you can see that the trigger object has changed to button. So now when you click on the button, the apple will go up, and we can test that out right here. Oh, sorry. So how I did that is I clicked on play, and then that will open up a new tab. I like to actually work with them side by side. So on one side, I would have the editor open. On the other side, other tab, I would have, the other window, I would have the play mode open. But for the purpose of this demo, I'll just do this. So, okay, I'm really hoping that this works. Yay. You can see that when I click on it, it moves up. And now what I want is for it to go up and down, up and down. So for it to loop and also ping pong between them. So I'm gonna click on the trigger object, which is the button. And this is where we see the timeline that appears on the side. The timeline essentially gathers all of the animations that are tied to this specific trigger object. So you can see that it's already filled with the apple. And then when I hover on it, I can confirm that this is indeed the apple. And then it goes from base state to state one. So you can kind of like click on them and see how they change. And then I see that the duration is 0.5 seconds right now, which I felt like it was a little too fast. So I'm going to click on that and drag it out to 2 seconds. And we'll see how that feels. To add the looping, and you can change the curve, if animation curve, if you want to. Like you just click on this ease drop down, and then you loop and ping pong. So it should work now. Let me refresh. Be sure. So that when I click on this, it's not working. Let me refresh again. Another thing that I'm gonna add is actually make this spin, because I think that's gonna be cooler. So with the state 1 of the apple selected, I'm gonna change the Y rotation to 360 degrees. So it kind of like spins and then like unspins back. So let's try that. There we go. You can see that it spins and unspins now. So that looks pretty good. And then now let's make the stop button basically stop the animation, like bring it back to the base state. So with the apple selected again, this is where we could try using any state. So with any state, you can just draw an arrow to base state, so that it basically, regardless of what state the apple is in, if you do the interaction or the event, it will bring it to base state, which is where we want it to stay. So here we'll do on pointer down, and the trigger object, instead of being the make it float button, it'll be the stop button. So I'm going to click on this crosshair icon, click on stop. And now it's pre-filled with a stop button, and that should work. Yeah. So now you can see that it like goes up and down when I press make it float. Then when I click on stop, it like goes back down and stays. So that's the really simple prototype. Now the one of the last parts is making this in AR. So when I said that this Bezel is built to be cross-platform, you can literally click on this environment on the right side panel. It says AR mode. You can click on the toggle and turn it on, and that's all you need for it to have pass-through and for it to work in AR. So I just turned that on. You can see this like checker pattern that comes down. It means that the background is transparent now. So what I want to do is I want to send you guys this link to try it out yourself. Whoops. So I'm going to open the share, and then I'm going to copy this prototype link, and then I'll send it to you guys in this chat. And you should be able to open it on your mobile device. It should work right out of the box for Android. If you have iOS devices, that's slightly different, and you'll need a WebXR viewer, an app called WebXR viewer. It's by Mozilla, so you'll need to install it. But after you do that, you'll be able to just paste this link in the Mozilla WebXR viewer, and then just like be able to see it in AR. Oh, I see people jumping in this file, so that's cool. Yeah, so check that out and let us know what you think. Okay, I'm going to stop screen share on this. And then let me go back to my presentation. Okay, cool. So that brings me to the next portion, is that we're going to be doing a design challenge called Design a Widget for Your Desk in AR. This is the link that you can go to find out more details about it. If someone can post it into chat, that would be great, so people can just click on it. But on this website, you'll have all of the things that you need, all of the details about the challenge, some inspo, ideas that you can definitely use for your prototype. And the grand prize is a MacBook Pro, which I think is pretty cool. So we're really excited to see what you guys create here. And the last thing I want to say is that we're going to be doing a Bezel design school. I think people have been talking about it in the chat anyways, but wanted to plug that in. It's tomorrow at 12 p.m. PT, and we're going to be going in depth about the state machine and timeline, because I know it's a lot. It's a very powerful tool, so we want to make sure that we're setting you guys up for success. So Daniel, our amazing designer, is going to be going through a more in-depth tutorial about that. So make sure you go to this link and also sign up for it so you don't miss it. With that, that's all I got today. Really appreciate you guys being here, and yeah, we can take some questions.
Awesome, thank you. That was great. I followed along the tutorial as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. You should have joined design school. Yeah, feel free to answer any questions you see.
Yeah. Well, one question I don't think we got to in the beginning. So I'm like kind of scroll.
Are you looking for a question, Julia?
Yeah. Sorry. I'll let you know when I find it. It's lost in the ocean of comments. I was trying to find it. But
yeah, for our buddies, please put all your questions in the Q&A box. Helps us find them.
Also, I'm going to jump in and say design school is actually at 2:30 Pacific Standard Time tomorrow. I had the wrong time on the image there, but 2:30 tomorrow, you'll have all the info in the email that we send out to you. We're also going to do another office hours for this challenge. So stay tuned for that update and that email. We're going to make sure you'll have plenty of time to like ask questions, go through your designs. And so you'll see that coming soon too.
Awesome, thank you. I'll be sending out all the links, including the recording of this workshop and design school and any other details and resources to Bezel in the follow-up email later tonight. If you sign up via Luma, then you'll be receiving an email. Otherwise, I'll also put them in Design Buddies Discord, and just also join Bezel's Discord as well.
I found the question. So he asked, is it necessary to become a 3D designer first and then become a UX designer in XR later if someone eventually wants to be a UX designer in the XR industry?
It's a great question. I don't think it's necessary to know all the skills of a 3D designer. Like, it's not a prerequisite. But what I do think is that you need to be able to think in a 3D way. And I think it also comes with training because you're as I was saying, you're no longer like designing for a 2D screen. You kind of need to understand like how far certain things need to be able to read it comfortably, what size it needs to be, and all these kind of like nuances that come with XR design. And these are things that you can't really, it's hard to learn without trying it, is what I would say. So, like as I was working at a company like Oculus, like I learned a ton while working there because it's just such a different world. So my answer would be like, you don't need to know like how to like model or anything, but you do need to be able to use some of these 3D tools like Bezel to be able to concept out and communicate your ideas effectively. Are there other questions?
Yeah, there's a lot of the Q&A as well.
I know we have limited time, so I'm trying to try to answer multiple at the same time.
Yeah. There were a lot of questions around how Bezel will integrate with different 3D tools out there. So like Unity, Unreal, Maya, Blender, I've seen all of them. Do you want to talk a bit about that, Cecilia?
Yeah, so I mean, I already mentioned things about importing models and the file formats that we support. We also support exporting your Bezel scenes, so you can export it as a GLTF, and also USDZ. We just recently added that. So you can export USDZ for it to work on Apple devices. We have some exciting stuff that we're working on in this arena. So, I can't say too much right now, but it'll be, we're definitely thinking about this because we know how important, the kind of the cross-platformness of tools are, especially in 3D world, because there's so many 3D tools that exist and, people use all kinds of tools.
Right. And then also the Figma integration. I think people asked about
Yeah. So you can, most designers do all their, 2D design work in Figma. So we added a Figma integration so that you can, as long as you put in your personal token from Figma, you can bring in any frames, Figma frames using the copy link from Figma function. And you can have them in Bezel, and you can also have them update kind of on demand. So you can do you can keep them in sync without having to go back and forth and re-export things and bring it into Bezel and back and forth. So that's a really useful feature when you're doing UI design. Is on the Design Buddies Challenge website, there's a iOS, an iMessages prototype example that's at the bottom, and that's actually using the Figma integration.
Someone asks, as a UX for XR designer, what kind of projects should I include in my portfolio?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
As a UX designer for XR, what kind of projects should I include in my portfolio?
I mean, I feel like it really depends on the person and the role you're going for and the companies that you want to work at. It's a hard question to answer, I guess, because of that. I would say it's really good to have some projects that show how you think about product, kind of from beginning to end, the entire flow. And then it's good to have a mix of projects, I think, with more craft stuff, micro interactions, and motion design around this. If you're thinking about the Fig Jam example I was talking about, if you're thinking about how people spawn, that's in itself a very complicated problem to solve. So if you have different options that you explore in that arena, and if you want to talk about how you got to a certain conclusion or a solution, that actually that story itself is really powerful for people who are trying to hire designers, because it shows that you're able to think through these problems and kind of come up with a solution that is very well meditated.
Mm-hmm. I did want to touch on a more personal question for Cecilia. What inspired you to learn XR and take the leap from 2D to 3D?
Honestly, it was kind of by chance. I was always interested in 3D, but I started off being interested in 3D art. So I was learning Cinema 4D just on my free time when I was working at agencies. And then what I realized is I was always interested in how people interacted with certain things. So back in school, I used to do packaging design because I was always interested in how physical objects, how it would feel when you open something, how something would come out, all of those experiences. And I found that packaging design in that sense actually has a lot of similarities with XR design, because it also has to do with 3D objects in a spatial environment, and kind of thinking about how people would go through flows or unwrap some certain things. So that itself was really enticing to me. But I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I just stumbled upon it because someone I worked with before was working at Oculus, and then it just happened that I got interviews there and stuff like that. But while I was there, I thought it was just so interesting. It's such an interesting problem to solve, and it's a lot of people problems to solve, because you're actually dealing with people being in the same space but not really. Co-presence in VR is a huge thing. Yeah, so it's a really hard problem, but I think that's what makes it really fun.
I know we're almost out of time, but last question, there were a couple of questions on what a widget is, or how you would define that for the challenge. So how would you define a widget?
I'm going to leave it pretty loose for people's interpretation. I guess like widget in the current sense means like it's like a smaller snippet of an app. So that's kind of how how I would approach it as well. You don't have to design like a full complicated flow of an app, but just pick like, I would pick something that is really interesting, kind of like nuggets of experience, and imagine how that might look like if it's in AR. So we actually have some examples of that on the website that I mentioned for the challenge. So definitely take a look there. There's some cool ideas that you can just use for yours, or you can look at some of the examples that we've made ourselves, and hopefully that'll be helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. This was a great presentation and workshop. I had fun working along in Bezel as well. And make sure to check out the design challenge. And I guess we have one more minute in case anyone has any other questions. Other than that, we hope to see your desks widgets. I'm excited to see what y'all create. And also in Design Buddies, we have a channel called AR Challenge Bezel. If you want to share any works in progresses, have any questions, feel free to ask them in there as well. We want to see like what you're creating. If you want feedback from your fellow buddies as you're going along the challenge. And also make sure to join Bezel's Discord as well. I'll drop these 2 links again in the chat so you can make sure you get feedback and the help you need throughout this challenge too. Cool. Anything else from anyone?
There are a lot of questions that aren't answered. So I don't think
Do y'all have a couple more minutes to answer the rest of the questions, or as much as we can?
Sure. Okay, which one should we focus on?
There's a lot.
can you submit more than
Jeffrey
one
asks,
idea
can
for
you
the design
speak?
challenge?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, can we submit more than one idea? I think I'm gonna keep it to one.
I mean, we're gonna choose the best one, so you can,
that's true.
but you will be judged on one. I want to talk about actually Jeffrey's question because I think it's really important. Can you speak on accessibility considerations for VR AR applications? This is really important and interesting thing to consider, and I've talked about this before in like a separate topic too. But when it comes to VR and AR design, I think accessibility takes a whole kind of new role because again, we're not confined to a 2D space. It's about how people move around in space, what people can reach. So when I was working at Oculus, we talked a lot about like, okay, like if someone's in a wheelchair, like how would they use the product? If someone, had only one hand, then they can't use both controllers. So what does that look like? Or something like, if you are missing fingers or something like that, then how do you do some of the hand gestures that you might need to trigger like the menu or something? So there's a ton of really, I think, interesting explorations that we need to do in this area. And it's something that we're thinking about a lot while we're building the product, because again, accessibility doesn't just mean just getting, everyone, or it means that you're able to use it regardless of any kind of, disabilities that you might have. So I think, XR has some really interesting applications there where, we can do like voice controls, or you can use gaze to interact with stuff. So because there's so many different input methods that you can use, our goal is to make sure that it's applicable for a wide range of people who would be using XR. I believe that XR could be really powerful in that way because you're not only confined to what we have currently. There's actually a lot more things that you can do there. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's very, very important.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I see a lot of chat. please plug your LinkedIn links in the introductions channel in Bezel and Design Buddies Discord. I'm just trying to make sure I can find all the questions too.
Awesome. Yeah. I would actually love to talk with anyone who is interested in XR accessibility. So feel free to send me a message on Discord or on LinkedIn, and I'd love to talk with you to kind of discuss what that might mean for you and what kind of things that you're thinking about.
Yeah, awesome. I know we're at time. If there's any further questions, please ask on the Bezel Discord as well, and hope to see you there and connect with fellow other buddies who are interested in XR on the Bezel Discord, and post your intro there too. And I'll send out all the links tonight, so you'll see them in your emails. So don't worry, and they're also shared all in Design Buddies general chat right now, so y'all can see it, but if not, they'll be in your inbox tonight. Cool, awesome. Thank you, everyone. We loved having you on. I had fun with the green apple as well. I turned my apple purple as well. Yeah. Anything else for anyone else before I wrap it up for today?
No. Thanks,
Awesome.
Cecilia.
Well, yeah, thank you everyone for being here. It's been really fun, and thank you, Grace and Design Buddies, for letting us host.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Happy